Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today. It's Monday morning. Welcome back from the weekend. Lindsey, good to be with you. You had a little less travel than usual, I think. You were actually in our fair city the whole weekend.
I spent the time in D.C. and I actually explored places like Eastern Market. I feel like it's going to be an ongoing thing. Like, what did I do to kind of embrace D.C. a little bit more? This weekend was my first time spending a weekend here.
Oh, nice.
Intentionally. So,
well,
yeah.
That's very nice.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I had a good one. My brother was visiting last week. He went home and played some Dungeons & Dragons this weekend, which always makes me happy.
I always hear you guys in my ear talking about that. I never know what you're referring to.
And you never will.
Coming up next on Rising, I'll discuss how President Trump is receiving millions of dollars in gifts while Americans are struggling economically.
We'll also discuss Andrew Cuomo's new line of attack on Zohran Mamdani.
We'll also touch on Trump saying he might deploy the National Guard to D.C. to fight crime. But first, we're going to start with Robby's radar. So what's on your radar today?
Let's get to it. Greg Gutfeld is a pretty funny guy. He's the late-night host on Fox News, which makes him the most well-watched comedian of cable news entirely. Yours truly has been on the show before. Really enjoyed the opportunity to reach such an audience, such a big audience. On the merits, it's the biggest audience there is as far as late night goes. So it makes sense to me. The one late night great would recognize another. To that end, late night host Jimmy Fallon hosted Greg Gutfeld recently. Here's a bit of Gutfeld discussing his career trajectory.
Stuff Magazine was there for a couple years.
Stuff Magazine.
Yeah, it was amazing. Got fired from there. Then went to Men's Health. Went to Maxim. Had to leave the country for, no, let's not get into that. God. In the UK and got fired from that. And so I was just sitting at a bar in Chelsea, and a friend says, you know, there's a Fox that wants to do a late night show. Are you interested? And I'm like, dude, I'm broke. So I will do anything. So they flew me over, and I started doing this show, Red Eye.
Gutfeld is a very funny man, and he's also successful, which is why Fallon had him on. In fact, Gutfeld bears the moniker King of Late Night because his audience on the conservative news channel Fox is higher than his competitors. It's a no-brainer for Fallon to host him as a kind of friendly mutual promotion. And yet, liberal mainstream media figures are furious that Fallon did this. Just look at the headlines here. Jimmy Fallon kisses the conservative ring, said Vulture. As if bothering to engage a conservative was an explicit endorsement of everything that person thinks. The Daily Beast spun it this way. Jimmy Fallon fawns all over MAGA late-night host Greg Gutfeld in softball chat, as if a humorous late-night show needs to be some vicious skewering of non-liberal perspectives. And of course, what remains of BuzzFeed was eager to attack Fallon for daring to platform Gutfeld at all. This seals it for me. People are completely turning on Jimmy Fallon for his recent talk show guest, and it's not pretty. That was the BuzzFeed headline. Remember back when this clickbait tripe actually mattered? When liberals rewarded BuzzFeed-esque content farming with millions of page views? When easily triggered progressives ruled the discourse with an iron fist? Well, guess what? Those days are over. Now no one cares what the pearl-clutching liberals of BuzzFeed have to say about anything. Gutfeld has a bigger audience, and for what it's worth, good on Gutfeld for being willing to platform alternative voices himself. Good on Fallon for being willing to platform alternative voices. Now, they didn't talk about politics, and that's okay. Not everything needs to be a political confrontation. Gutfeld, for his part, was incredibly magnanimous and thanked Fallon for having the guts to have him on. Seems like Fallon understands that late night is losing ground. Stephen Colbert, anyone? If he wants to become unprofitable and unsuccessful and ultimately unemployable, like the perennially unfunny Stephen Colbert, then he needs to innovate a bit. I'm happy to see it, and probably the country's millions of conservatives were as well. More of this, please.
I was happy to see that Fallon is open-minded about his guests. I think Gutfeld, we have to be really specific that he is funny to you, but problematic to other people.
Problematic? What's problematic about it?
I had to make sure that I was accurate.
Okay,
I didn't want to bother your friend or the guest who you are on his show. So he suggested that conservatives should reclaim the word Nazi the same way that blacks reclaim the N-word. That was on it. That's a quote from him.
It was probably joking.
What's funny about that? What's funny about both of those? We talked about parody.
I'd have to find the context.
Fine. He also said that crime would disappear if women did. I mean, I guess that's a joke, but these are things that have come out of his mouth. He oversimplifies the Holocaust all the time. People get really upset with him and the conversations that he has. And I watched his show because I find it interesting. Charlemagne is a friend of mine who's been on his show, and I've seen the way that they banter, right? So obviously there's a space that he allows for people who might disagree with him to come on and have dialogue. But Jimmy Fallon, particularly, I think people are annoyed with him because in 2016, you'll remember, he had President Trump on right before the election. and these same headlines that you're reading probably happened again. But then Jimmy Fallon went ahead and did interviews in magazines and apologized, saying, that was wrong of me to platform him and not ask any serious questions. So to come here in 2025, a couple of years later, and do the same thing and not ask any questions about, and not that he needs to be Barbara Walters, right? Let's be clear about the space.
It's a comedy
But he
show.
still can ask a question that obviously, if there's somebody who many consider problematic, including possibly you based on your dialogue about having Trump on, which I want to be clear, I think a sitting possible president should be on talk shows and every type of show. But Gutfeld is not, and so you should definitely provide a space to ask him at least one question. Like, do you ever regret some? You could lightly. Do you ever regret some of the things you say on air? You think you go too far with like that's not an appropriate question. If me and you were at the bar, like I can ask you that. You can ask me that.
Well, fine, that's fine. But why is the assumption that the liberal perspective is the default perspective when there are more? Again, Gutfeld has a broader audience. There are more Trump supporters in this country than there are liberals. So why is the viewpoint like, oh, this is a weird outsider person, and we got to make sure we ask them some confrontational question? Like you wouldn't say that, I don't think, of like a liberal comedian. Like, let's make sure we grill them over some stupid thing liberals believe. I don't think exactly the perspective. In fact, I think if a liberal comedian were to go on Gutfeld, as happens from time to time, a cool left person, I don't think they're going to be mercilessly skewered.
Well, I certainly think that there should be space for, this is part of the conversation of, like, I like the line you said about clutching your pearls. That's the issue with Democrats right now, right? They're constantly, can't believe, like, we're not in that time anymore, okay? Everybody younger than the boomers who you like to constantly throw ridicule at, which respectfully, there's a lot of reasons why you possibly can. I still think that, we need to go with the times, and the times are a little bit more free. Conversations should happen. People on different sides of the aisle should communicate. We're not very much, we can't speak to you if you voted for this person or did this thing. But I think with Gutfeld, like, he created a space where he's very vocal. Sometimes his jokes get a little bit, go all the way over into the level inappropriate. And so you just kind of watch
whether the joke is inappropriate.
I guess his audience loves I guess the audience loves to watch that.
Can't jokes be inappropriate and still be funny? I don't know what the context were for the examples you provided. I assume the crime would disappear if women disappear. I mean, men cause most crime, so this is like a nagging wife joke. Like, if your old ball and chain wasn't driving you up a wall, you wouldn't go commit crime. Is that maybe the joke? Which is
fine,
pretty benign, if so.
Possibly, but the
how straight to the
example
moon
the
kind of
joke,
thing.
I'll explain where that one came
All right.
from. It came from, like, okay, how many times that liberals might call somebody fascist or Nazi-esque or use
and then it loses
Gestapo,
all meaning.
It loses the meaning, and so he's like, okay, so let's just recoup the word in the same way that we might hear a rap song saying that word. And so that was his point. But it's just like, distasteful, correct? Like, don't we want to make sure that we're having like a little bit of decorum,
It's kind of like you're calling me a fascist because I think that the government ought to do something about the crime. Right, doesn't really make me a fascist, but I might be called a fascist for expressing that opinion. In fact, when we're going to be talking about the D.C. whole crime situation, I'm very excited for that discussion. That's coming up next. People won't want to miss it. And I saw somebody on Reddit, I think, this went viral on social media, just saying there's too much crime and I would like there to be less, and it got taken down for being, oh, you're a fascist for thinking that.
It got taken down?
Yeah, by Reddit liberal moderators. So that goes to show how far the left, on a couple things, where you can't tell jokes, you can't, want common sense solutions.
But you can say stuff like, Jimmy Kimmel's not funny, right, to you.
Yeah.
We watch his clips, I'm over here cackling, you have a straight face. I don't think Gutfeld's that funny, honestly.
That's fine.
And so, like, maybe people are just saying, like, Jimmy Fallon has a big audience. Like, come on, pick somebody else, pick anyone else.
I'm humorless and I don't appreciate comedy, and I've never once laughed in my entire life. So I don't really think any of these people are funny, but, people like to be entertained one way or another. Next up, President Trump threatening to federalize the nation's capital in an attempted crackdown on crime and homelessness. We'll talk about it next. We'll be right back. President Trump says he may deploy the National Guard in the nation's capital to help fight crime.
So as of Sunday, administration officials said there was no final decision on whether to deploy the troops in D.C., but the president seems to have his heart set on it, posting this on Truth Social just this morning. Washington, D.C. will be liberated today. Crime, savagery, filth, and scum will disappear. I will make our capital great again. The days of ruthlessly killing or hurting innocent people are over. I quickly fixed the border. D.C. is next. It comes after a different Truth Social post on Sunday where Trump vowed to evict homeless people from D.C. streets, writing, quote, "The homeless have to move out immediately. We will give you places to stay, but far from the Capitol. The criminals, you don't have to move out. We're going to put you in jail where you belong. Be prepared. There will be no Mr. Nice Guy. We want our Capitol back."
An official told our sister network News Nation that troops would likely support law enforcement officials with logistics, similar to just 2 months ago when Trump sent the California National Guard to help quell the violent protests there. Now, many in Trump's camp seem to be excited about the prospect. Carrie Lake posted to X, "I can't wait. There are very dangerous and in some cases drugged out, deranged, and psychotic people roaming the streets in D.C. Everyone is sick of it." Conservative podcaster Nick Sorter writing in his own post, "Do it, President Trump. Law and order must be restored to our nation's capital."
Meantime, Representative Eric Swalwell condemned the threat, writing, quote, "Senate Dems could have stopped this and when we had power. In 2021, the House voted to make D.C. a state, but a few Senate Dems flinched and genuflected to the filibuster. Now D.C. will be under an aspiring dictator's control." Everybody uses the biggest words to
Dictator.
go back and
It's
forth.
dictatorial now to think that the federal government, which is responsible for D.C. to some degree, should take more of a role in preventing crime. Our city is besieged by crime. Yes, it's true. Crime has fallen since the pandemic highs. Yet we still have about as much crime, or maybe more, than places like Detroit and St. Louis and Philadelphia. There's too much crime in America's big cities, regardless. D.C. it's bad out there, and something ought to be done. And I don't care whether the answer is federal troops or the answer is having Virginia or Maryland troops, but whatever D.C. itself is doing is not rising to the challenge, and it's not enough. And it's not, so there are two different problems here that are kind of getting confused. So the deranged, drugged out homeless people are one issue. Frankly, I do think there is less of them. During the pandemic, that was awful. There was tent cities all over the city. That's not, from my understanding, most of what we're talking about now with crime is not those people. It is teenagers. It is teenagers doing carjackings, beating people up. What prompted this was this former Doge employee who's got a funny nickname that I'm not sure we can say
I missed
on
talking
local
to you about that,
TV.
yes.
He got beaten up during an attempted carjacking, and again, it's not homeless people. It's teenagers. And so wayward youths being out causing mayhem. This happens in my neighborhood a lot. That is the problem we're dealing with right now. It's not so much, crazy homeless people, although that needs to be handled as well. That's not what's causing the crime right now.
Well, first, to me, most importantly, numbers don't lie. Like you said, when you look at 2024, local lawmakers put together a package that would try to reduce crime in D.C., and it's been very effective. As you mentioned, it's down more than 20% crime, and I know the pandemic numbers were high since last year, but also violent crime hit a 30-year low in the city. Last year. So violent crime's at a 30-year low, and President Trump is trying to bring in federal troops. The issue is not that I want crime. I don't think that people on the other side of your conversation are saying
this should be the
we need
safest
more
city in
crime.
America.
Fine, it could be safe, but the point is nobody asked for federal help. And the same thing that President Trump did in Los Angeles, which was overstepping when local officials felt equipped to handle it, right? And Republicans should agree, allow states to handle their business, allow D.C. to handle its business. Why is the federal
Local
government...
officials are not equipped to handle this?
No,
They've
they are. I
proven
just told you that they put together a package that brought violent crime down, and so we hit a 30-year low last year. So they are equipped.
Well,
so where's
DC
this coming
has
from?
historically had incredibly high crime. We have
Right,
worse
and so
crime
does
than New York.
Chicago. So does Detroit, like you said.
Our
So
crime
what-
is worse than
why
New
are
York.
why are we not sending federal troops everywhere? He's just literally has this obsession over things, and then wants to, and especially if they have Democratic leadership, he wants to just go over their heads and not have any type of engagement. Like this conversation generally looks like having a conversation with Muriel Bowser and saying, "Hey, how can I assist? How can the federal government assist?" Not going over her head and saying, "Here's what I'm doing." Right? That's ridiculous. That's what we have local elected officials for. That's the point of people in certain positions. And I think we should allow, like Republicans stand on, it's part of the leg of the party, is to allow places to govern themselves with local officials.
Muriel Bowser is not, she is far from my favorite political figure. I had a lot of differences with her during the pandemic. I don't think she is the main problem. In fact, she has called for more police. We just need more police in the city. Our police staffing levels are at a historic low.
We don't need a
need
national
more police.
guard, though. Maybe find police.
Well,
We can have that conversation.
Look, I'm not married to this as the only solution. I'm saying something needs to be done. We can hire more local police. Actually, the major problem, to the extent I know what it is that judges in D.C. they throw out any attempt to prosecute people for bad behavior. I appreciate a zeal for civil liberties, but they've taken it too far. And what the effect of that is that prosecutors won't bring charges against people because they know the judges are going to throw them out every time. Because the judges they were picked by Biden, not by the voters of the city, not by our local elected officials. They're picked by the federal government. So a replacement of them would do a lot of good.
And I do think a lot of this is very politically motivated because President Trump knows he has a moment where everyone's looking at him after the DOJ staffer was hurt in this incident to say crime is so terrible, highlighting this one incident and say I'm going to do something about it because he's looking for more winning issues because regular Americans are still like, hey, what's up with the change of economy you promised on day one and things like that. And so I think this is another issue that he knows that he can get people rallied up over because people want crime to go down in all states. I just don't think the solution matches the problem.
Don't you think it's appalling, though, that this could take, these are instances of crime happening, a couple blocks from the White House and the Capitol building. And
but I think all crime is appalling
government
across the country. I think it's
I agree,
gets carjacked in Colorado.
Well, sure, but I mean, where I live in D.C. is very near the Capitol. There was a Democratic member of Congress who got carjacked while sitting in his car outside his apartment building, which is a block from mine and just a couple blocks from the Capitol. This is, I don't want to say it's not a problem if it's only happening to poor and politically insignificant people, but this is happening with steps away from the seat of power. And I think that's that doesn't project strength and greatness, that projects American decline, that we are unable to solve very basic criminal problems within earshot of these beautiful buildings that are behind us on screen.
But the solution is federal overreach, right? Because that is the antithesis of everything that Trump is supposed to stand for.
It's a federally, it is a federally administered district.
I'm just saying, we're overreaching because the local officials did not ask for the help. So that is the antithesis of everything that the party stands for historically. So this is why I'm confused about why, because this is a winning issue, Trump is just pushing this forward. Yes, be tough on crime. Republicans have been the law and order party, right? Ever since Reagan, that's just been the stance, and that's worked really well for them. So he's using this jargon knowing that it's getting people heightened, but honestly, it's not necessary because crime is down, and also no one's asking for federal assistance here.
Crime is down, but it was already very high, and even its baseline, I would argue, in D.C. was way, way, way too high.
You want it to be 0%. Human nature doesn't allow that for everyone to be.
Well, I want it to be nice. It's a nice city. We have pretty buildings. We pay a lot of money. It should be nice and orderly, like a well-administered city in the country. And frankly, I want all of our cities to be like that. I want Philadelphia and Detroit and Chicago to bring down their crime too. And so do most Americans. So do people who live in these cities. So do especially low-income people who live in the dangerous parts of the city.
In really pretty cities too, Robbie. That's what I'm saying. And nobody wants President Trump to come in and solve the issue. That's why we have local.
I do not agree that no one wants President Trump to come in and solve the issue.
Okay, I'll speak for the
Lots
of
people want him to do that. And it's not even Trump specifically, it's just the federal government maybe can do more, especially for D.C. Some of these areas there's jurisdictional fights over whether the city or the federal government is supposed to administer them. And the city is not doing enough.
We have a lot more to talk about. Next up, President Trump is directing the Pentagon to take military action against certain foreign drug cartels. Don't go anywhere.
New York Times is reporting that President Trump is directing the Pentagon to use military force against foreign drug cartels, specifically those cartels that the administration has labeled terrorist organizations.
Now, the Times, which cites multiple sources familiar with this matter, says the order gives an official basis for potential direct military operations on foreign soil and sea. The Times also writes that military personnel are already weighing options for how to go about this.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio discussed the subject of foreign drug cartels last week. Let's listen.
We have to start treating them as armed terrorist organizations, not simply drug dealing organizations. Right. Drug dealing is the kind of terrorism they're doing, and it's not the only. Yeah. They're also into human trafficking, they smuggle anything, and there's been nascent cooperation between them and some international terrorist organizations in the past, which pose an ongoing danger to the United States.
Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said she rejects the idea of U.S. military force in Mexico, saying in part, quote, "The United States is not going to come to Mexico with the military. We cooperate, we collaborate, but there's not going to be an invasion. That is ruled out, absolutely ruled out." I love that she disagrees with Trump so firmly, but then they still have dialogue, like civilized
Possible to
people.
do.
I appreciate that. I also think that everybody is anti-cartel. This is, again, similar and mirroring the D.C. issue, except the D.C. is under our federal jurisdiction, and targeting Mexico criminals is not. We are looking at them as a terrorist organization, and they're really a criminal group, and that's how historically we've always looked at people. And so I think to go in there and not go with Congress approval and not call this an act of war and just kind of violate some international agreements that we had by just deciding that we're going to just go about this tactic and not converse with anybody in Congress about a plan here, that's to me out of bounds. And also, we have an ally in Mexico. Why are we doing something that they did not ask us to do?
Well, because they're not taking this problem seriously enough is the Trump administration's perspective. The cartels are a menace. Everyone agrees on that. A terrorist organization needs to be dealt with. But yes, I would be similarly very reticent to, just start, bombing another country's territory without more willingness on their part or Congress to approve it. That would be a foreign war. What would he keep saying? No new foreign wars. That's what Trump ran on. Now, he also ran on being very clear that the cartels are bad and something ought to be done, and the drug infestation is very bad. But I don't know. I think a lot of civil liberties violations can result from that, a lot of unintended consequences. If we turn Mexico into more of a failed state on our borders, that wouldn't be a good thing. A lot of our efforts to root out terrorism in the Middle East, as well-intentioned as they were, are now things we look back on and go, well, did this make the world more stable or less stable? We killed a lot of bad guys, but we also, contributed to the collapse of some governments that were far from ideal, but were better than what replaced them. So I would just say I'd be very reluctant to start indiscriminately bombing Mexico or sending ground troops into Mexico. Absolutely not. We're not sending ground troops anywhere else. No new wars, America first.
And also, there's so many nuances here that could get the U.S. in an uncomfortable situation across the board. Like, if this is not declared a war and you go over there and kill somebody that isn't like an imminent threat, that will be considered murder, right? That's like not giving somebody an opportunity to be.
Well, when the government does it, they pardon themselves for that.
Well, that's what that's
consider it murder.
Like, we don't want to. I don't think there could be international fallout from other countries. It's just a lot to think about when you make these firm stances and take these firm decisions, and President Trump just says stuff, or Marco Rubio kind of firmly says this is what we're doing to attack. Like, yes, this is a problem, and yes, we should handle it, but you have to work closely with the source of the problem, which would be Mexican authorities, to try to make it work. And Claudia Steinbaum seems very unafraid to have direct conversation about what works for her and her country, and so maybe go that route without declaring something that she needs to respond to on social media.
What works for us is for the president of Mexico to take the problem of the cartels a little bit more seriously than this. So
unserious, that's not an objective statement. Is she not taking it serious?
Get it under control, lady. It's your country. And if you don't get it under control, we will. But we don't want to. We want you to take it under control.
Oh,
I think that's the Trump perspective.
Sorry, Ms. Steinbaum. Still ahead. Trump spending billions on jets and ballrooms, while many voters are saying their economic outlook isn't getting any better. So I'll have that coming up next in my lens. Stick around.
All right, Lindsay, what's in your lens?
Okay, let's talk about it. The U.S. economy isn't in a recession yet, and hopefully it won't be. But according to Moody's Analytics chief economist Mark Zandi, the number of industries cutting back on headcount is concerning. Meanwhile, Americans are struggling, grappling with debt, the rising cost of living, and a general sense that their dollar just isn't going far enough. And they're not just blaming, quote, the economy in the abstract. 6 out of 10 Americans say the Trump administration is driving up their cost of living, according to a new Morning Consult poll. But there's one person who doesn't seem to be feeling the pinch. He's spending millions of dollars and accepting literal gold gifts, President Trump, which feels wildly out of touch with everyday Americans. Last week, Donald Trump received a glass disc with a 24-karat gold base from Apple CEO Tim Cook. Earlier this year, he accepted a $400 million jet from the Qatari royal family, worth over 100 times more than all foreign gifts given to the U.S. presidents combined since 2001. And get this, it could cost up to $1 billion to renovate. He also reimagined the Oval Office, drenching it in gold, from the stars surrounding the presidential seal on the ceiling to the statuses on the fireplace mantle. And it emerged last week that Trump intends to build an enormous $200 million ballroom for hosting official receptions. One of the biggest White House projects in more than a century. Let's take a look in his words.
So we'll start in 2 months, maybe 2.5 months. and we'll have it completed in less than 2 years.
Wow.
It's a very incredible structure. I mean, a lot of it's the interior work. It's going to be beautiful. I'd rather, because normally I could build a building like that in 4 or 5 months, but it's very intricate inside. It's beautiful.
Right.
Beautiful.
Wonderful.
The best marbles.
The best marbles. And who's paying for this? Well, White House officials say Trump and, quote, unspecified donors. I mean, if it's a gift, it could raise both ethical and legal questions, potentially violating the Foreign Emoluments Clause of the U.S. Constitution or the Foreign Gifts and Decorations Act, which exists to block this type of thing. Democrats are also skeptical. Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said at a press briefing, quote, listen, I'm happy to eat my cheeseburger at my desk. I don't need a $200 million ballroom to eat it in, okay? And many Americans feel the same. Sure, White House upgrades might look impressive, and yes, gold gifts make for great photo ops, but while the president is basking in the nice marble and chandeliers, millions of Americans are just trying to make rent, keep groceries on the table, and pay off their credit card debt. When the person in the highest office is spending and receiving millions frivolously while the country is tightening its belt, it's not just bad optics, it's a reminder of exactly how far removed our leaders can be from the lives of the people that they represent.
But, Lindsey, there's no connection between the economic situation and Trump receiving gifts and spending his own money to renovate the White House, to build a ballroom. He is
also
paying for that.
asking people, what is it,
He
on
is
Cash
paying
App?
for that.
On Cash App to help bring down the debt?
Yeah,
Why doesn't he put $1 billion towards the debt?
If Democrats...
Because he raised it so much with this big, beautiful bill, why doesn't he pay down the debt?
If Democrats were going to be building this ballroom, it would be wildly over budget. It would take forever to build it. They would raise your taxes and mine to pay for it, and it still wouldn't get built.
So we're getting
what would happen.
Random donors. We're getting random donors from other places. Like we got that Qatari jet with no favors, no string attached. Now we're getting $200 million from random unspecified donors, and we're expecting that they want nothing in return. Not one thing. We're just okay with that. Like, no, tell the specified donors to donate to people's pockets. People can't afford groceries.
To be having foreign leaders and business titans paying homage, paying tribute to the greatness
like
of
laying
our
flowers
country.
at the feet of
Isn't
President
that better
Trump?
than
It's not about our
having
country,
disrespect and
It's not
disinterest in America's economic future?
I don't think it's about our country, though. I think it's about President Trump. Everyone's trying to cozy up to him and pay money. It's like almost bribery. Like, come do this $200 million idea. Oh, give me this. Do this. Like,
It's not
Trump,
give me this.
Trump
It's
underreported how many
building
gifts
this
he
ballroom
received.
will be great for, 100 years to come.
Yeah, but it's just the egregious behavior. He underreported how many gifts he received in his first term. Like, barely reported any. And he received
Wow. Oh, yeah. Lock him up. Yeah. What a crime.
That's against I just told you a part of the Constitution that violates. Do you not believe in the law of the land?
I just don't care that much.
Well, that's crazy that we have rules in place against this type of thing. And so if you just want to pay for it yourself or you want to spend all this money, don't you think you should have some awareness? Like, at the same time, he's personally attacking Mamdani for coming up with solutions that Mamdani believes are effective to bring the cost down for regular Americans.
But Mamdani's solutions are not effective.
Yeah,
and
but
that's
Trump
the
is not
difference.
providing any solutions that are actually bringing the cost down. Americans feel tighter. I read that poll in the beginning on purpose to say that Americans are now blaming him, not Biden, for how they're feeling about the economy. They're blaming him. So what are you going to say? The response to that is $200 million ballroom to dance around with other rich people. Give me an answer. No, everyone's confused. Everyone is confused about the way forward and how to relax the stress of how much things are costing.
It's Trump's economy now. You're right. I would advise policies, some of which Trump is pursuing, some of which he is not. The big, beautiful bill was obscene, and we need to cut spending, and we need to reduce taxation, and we need to not do tariffs, or at least not have permanent in-place tariffs to try to do industry here. That doesn't make any sense. So some of the economic policies of the president I support, some I don't support. I'll say the economy, though, we did add fewer jobs, and that was sad panda about that. I think that does have to do with tariffs. Again, tariffs not a great idea. We should try to move away from them.
Those are his two key legislation pieces that you.
We did, have really good, the stock market doing really well lately. Tech stocks doing great. The business community innovators in America are responding well to the Trump economy, and that is going to pay dividends down the line. There's good economic forecasting based on what's happening. So the market is confident in Trump's approach, and that will eventually reflect itself in the prices and the job opportunities. Yeah, is it perfect? Absolutely not. I would recommend somewhat different policies than what Trump is pursuing because I am not a sycophant who always agrees with Trump no matter what he does. That's not me. We should not do the tariffs. We should have good trade relations with the rest of the country. Now, he sees the tariffs as that's how we're going to get to the good trade relations, which fine. I can't wait for them to be done, and then the economy will grow robustly. But him renovating a ballroom or getting, what was the gift he got from Tim Cook? It was like a
gold-plated
like
statue worth.
Yeah.
Way too much.
Tim Cook's real value is the great company he's built and the great companies built by these other tech leaders who are solidly behind Trump because they know that Republican policies will benefit their industries and that their industries are what grow the American economy. They never again will they get behind the likes of Biden and Sanders and Bernie who want to who want to do antitrust and regulate their industries out of existence and make us less competitive, losing out to China and to Europe and to Brazil and to Russia.
When you talk about Tim Cook and his relationship with President Trump, when you talk about the stock markets and the markets fluctuating and how the average American, you sound like Charlie Brown's teacher. Just wah, 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 like that. That is ridiculous. Like, no one is invested in the stock market right now. Nobody of the average American who's suffering and talking about these groceries that I just brought up, the poll that the Morning Consult did, these are not people that are like, oh yeah, let me see how my dollar grows because I have money to spare right now. They're people that are aspiring to possibly invest in the stock market, but they have no leisurely funds to spend. And so what I'm saying is that the president is the highest office, and when he's criticizing somebody like Mamdani who's offering policies that people think may help them, even if he disagrees, what's your solution? Because you named his two biggest legislation pieces outside of immigration, maybe three. But so we're not talking about immigration, we're talking about the big beautiful bill and tariffs, and people say that those directly are the reasons why the economy is not doing great.
Deregulate, cut taxes, have
so they think
more
he's
trade.
not doing a
That's
great
what you
job.
should do.
So at the same time, spending
Doing an
frivolously,
okay job.
those mirroring things and not sit well with the average American, and talking about how the markets are doing and how Tim Cook is giving him some gifts because some agreement they have because he likes him. That's good for Tim Cook, but the average American doesn't feel that way.
Maybe we can have an average American goes for a dance in the ballroom day or something.
They're never going to be invited also to this $200 million ballroom.
Well, up next, Andrew Cuomo is also attacking Zohran Mamdani. More Rising right after this. Former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is attempting to boost his chances in the New York City mayoral race. His latest strategy is attacking Zohran Mamdani's rent-stabilized apartment. Now, in a lengthy post on X, which garnered tens of millions of views, Cuomo writes, somewhere last night in New York City, a single mother and her children slept at a homeless shelter because you, Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani, are occupying her rent-controlled apartment. He adds, you make $142,000 a year plus stipends. No matter which way you cut it, Zohran Mamdani is a rich person. You are actually very rich, yet you and your wife pay $2,300 a month. As you've bragged for a nice apartment in Astoria, that should be housing for someone who needs it. Kept it all off by saying, today I am calling on you to move out immediately and give your affordable housing back to an unhoused family who need it. Leaders must show moral clarity. Time to move out.
Cuomo also announced this weekend his proposal for Zohran's law, which he says aims to keep the rich out of New York's affordable housing. Let's take a look.
Rent-stabilized units, when they're vacant, should only be rented to people who need affordable housing, not people like Zohran Mamdani. You don't need to be renting rent-stabilized units to wealthy people. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're abusing the system. I'm going to propose not rent that apartment by law, except to a person who actually needs affordable housing. And I'm going to call it Zohran's law because it's an abuse of the system.
Now, Mamdani has not responded to Cuomo's message for proposed the law, but the attacks come days after recent polling shows Mamdani is leading Cuomo by 13 points, according to a recent Decision Desk HQ poll. As a reminder, Cuomo currently lives in an $8,200 a month Manhattan apartment, according to The Times. Additionally, Forbes estimates Cuomo is worth about $10 million, which they say is a roughly five-fold gain in less than a decade. And if you want to do the math, CNBC estimates the income needed to be considered middle class in New York City ranges from $51,000 to $153,000. So Zohran Mamdani wasn't even in middle class consideration because he made $47,000 when he got that apartment, and you know, there was a difference.
Now he makes 140 something.
Yeah, but he made 47 when he got it, and he stayed there. How many times when you move somewhere and you're comfortable would you get out of that apartment? I don't think he's like, how can I take advantage of the people? I think he found a cheap apartment, got a new job more recently, and made a new salary. And so now he also said directly that he plans to move. But this is all a lot going on in the middle of a campaign.
I mean, I guess the point would be he comes from significant wealth and privilege, though. So while he maybe didn't on paper have a good income, I mean, this just speaks to the difficulty of correctly making these laws in such a way where you're only giving some benefit to people who are truly needy and not to others. Yes, again, because of his income status, he might perfectly well have qualified for it at the time. But I know from, I remember my college days where a bunch of students at the University of Michigan, they had, in Michigan we called them, I think, bridge cards. It's basically food stamps because you have no income, so you can qualify for it, that they would just use to buy beer. It's an age-old problem.
Like you can't
buy. But it's not enforceable.
You can't buy beer on. That's not how that works.
This was the state, the local, not the federal food stamp problem. But that doesn't work either because money is fungible. So you can just spend like whatever money you were going to spend on groceries. Now you're spending with this, and you spend the money you would spend on groceries on beer. So it doesn't. Even that prescription doesn't work.
For Cuomo, this is very much a distraction, right? We know last week that people were tying him to President Trump. We know that he is probably surprised and bewildered that somebody like Mamdani, who was basically nameless a year ago, has outpaced him in the polls. We know that that doesn't make him comfortable in this race. And people are saying that he had a direct conversation with President Trump. He's denying it. But even his behavior is very Trump-esque. Let me find something. I got to do a jab. Instead of like actively talking about policies that he would put in place, he's like, how can I jab Mamdani? And it's also really interesting to hear him talk about affordable housing when he's providing no solutions to provide affordable housing to what Mamdani is doing. He's not providing any relief for New Yorkers who resonate, especially in New York City, with the problem of overly expensive housing. I mean, he works specifically and has donors that are big real estate developers. And so a lot of the policies he's put in place over the years are keeping the rents low, right, for owners of these buildings and owners of big, massive properties in New York City.
Well, I certainly don't support government intervention to dictate to people what they can charge for the properties they own. I think that's the difference between rent control and rent stabilization. I could be wrong. Rent control is right. It is the government saying, here's what you have to charge. Rent stabilization is probably, I'm guessing, the government subsidizing the difference between what it costs and what they're going to raise it by so that you don't feel the effects of the raise, but that the property owner can still raise the rent. Regardless, the solution is very obvious, very easy solution. You got to build more housing. Allow more housing to be built because when there's more availability, prices
So should they go upwards?
slower.
Because New York is kind of packed, if you've seen it recently. Like where are they building at?
I don't know, redevelop some office buildings that people aren't using anymore because more people work from home. I'm sure it can be done. Regulation gets in the way, and that's how you fix it.
So all the times, like Cuomo's talking about Mamdani's morals, everything that he said in the read-in into this segment, you are going to allow this to fly, knowing that Cuomo morally was acting pretty bankrupt when it came down to people in those nursing homes just a few years ago, knowing that he has a lot of accusations against him that morally would be seen incorrect. And knowing that
I don't have a dog in this fight. I mean, I don't like Andrew Cuomo. I would never vote for him based on.
But you love Mamdani.
I don't love Mamdani at all. I mean, I don't have anything against him personally the way I sort of do against Cuomo, but Mamdani's socialist policies will ruin New York, obviously, so I don't want him to. I have no dog. I don't live in New York and would not vote for either of these candidates. I would probably vote for Eric Adams, honestly. And I didn't like him very much either, but he seems by far the least bad of the options.
Every time you see Eric Adams, he's more like in the mix in the party. He seems like more like your friend and your homie than somebody who needs to be leading the state, or the city.
Not my circus, not my monkeys, but I do care about affordable housing, and the best way to have affordable housing is to allow for more housing to be built, allow for competition. I just went through this. I live in a neighborhood that right now does have a lot of availability, and my building I had to renew my lease. They tried to jack up my rent. It was outrageous. I've never seen anything like this. I said, no, I will not pay this. This is insane. And I started looking at the units across the street, and they came back to me and said, oh, okay, never mind. And I
left it the same.
Didn't leave it the same. Still a little increase, but way less than what they prescribed. Oh yeah.
I was like, no high five. Okay.
That's worth it.
That's actually really.
So
good.
I'm encouraging you,
stand up for yourself.
Stand up for yourself. Negotiate.
Okay. Well, and it's also good when leadership tells people not to do stuff like that, right? I know you don't like federal involvement, and we might disagree wholeheartedly about the approach there. But if people are saying, okay, if the rent was $2,300, you can't make it $5,000. Like there has to be some type of limitation on how greedy people can be when you're dealing with people that are struggling with inflation and a bunch of other stuff. So if Cuomo actually wanted to provide a solution, he can lay one out and not come up with Zohran's law that tells people that they can't live in rent-controlled apartments. Like that's not the main crux of the issue with housing in New York City. That a lot of people are taking over spaces. That
I don't want the government trying to prescribe what the right cost. I mean, Argentina just went through this. Javier Milei, my guy, my hero, fixing so many of that country's problems, ended rent control and said landlords can charge whatever they want, and has dramatically increased the availability of housing in the country by just letting the market do its work.
What
not
about
having
the
the government
keyword
decide.
affordable?
What?
What are the housing prices looking like now? I bet they're
Because there's more availability. You don't have to worry about that problem as much, because then, well, if I can't afford this one, there's competition is what brings down prices. We just allow for more competition.
Well, that's one solution, but I'm not hearing any solutions from Cuomo's
Well,
side, and that's kind of my
happening.
biggest concern is that he's
I also don't
deflecting
know
from having a conversation with Trump, which he knows is not a winning connection for anybody who's voting democratically.
I would need to know more about what this apartment, like the size of this apartment, to evaluate whether that price sounds.
It's probably
fair to
astronomically
me.
high for a one-bedroom if they have that.
Well, in Astoria, again, I'm not a New York expert. I visit the city more than I'd like to because I don't really like it.
It really can't be huge. I mean, I have friends that
Astoria
live in Astoria.
is Queens.
Queens, yeah,
Queens?
and it's a pretty expensive part of Queens. It's not like it's very close to Manhattan.
If that's a
Manhattan
one-bedroom
Road,
apartment, that sounds cheap to me. Very cheap for that price. If it's
a studio.
yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe that's fair. I don't know. If it's a big apartment, then that's outrageous that they can artificially keep it that low. I don't know. I don't know how nice it is. I don't know what modern appliances it has. I don't really care either. He can take advantage of the law the way it's written, just like anyone else. That's fine, but I don't like the policy overall. That's what I would say.
All right, next up, ChatGPT appears to have helped convince a user that he discovered a new revolutionary mathematical formula. We'll be right back after this.
Well, it seems like unusual stories about human interactions with AI chatbots aren't going away anytime soon. New York Times profiled a 47-year-old corporate recruiter named Alan Brooks, chronicling his experience with ChatGPT.
The Times opens their story by explaining how, thanks to conversations with ChatGPT, Brooks believed he discovered a novel mathematical formula that could power inventions like a levitation beam and a force field vest, and could also take down the entire internet. The Times continues, quote, Mr. Brooks, who had no history of mental illness, embraced this fantastical scenario during conversations with ChatGPT that spanned 300 hours over 21 days. He's one of a growing number of people who are having persuasive, delusional conversations with generative AI chatbots that have led to institutionalization, divorce, and death.
Brooks eventually realized this was all an illusion that the chatbot helped provoke. Part of the issue, the Times suggests, is the concept of sycophancy, which is when chatbots try to give you the answers you want to hear, even if they're not true. The Times tried to replicate Brooks' interactions with ChatGPT with other chatbots. The Times says the results were similar.
So Brooks says he now advocates for more AI safety regulations, telling the Times, quote, it's a dangerous machine in the public space with no guardrails. He said people need to know. So this story is like a little funny because this one is like nothing serious happened. But in certain cases, like the New York Times pointed out, this can go way further and somebody can do something to someone else, themselves. And like, they think they have a friend online. And so that might deal into the mental health space. And so that is a real thing that we should, like AI, while I think it should be open to explore and it has enhanced already my life and so many people in great ways, it shouldn't just be anything goes.
Yes,
right?
it should.
Okay, but what happens if more negative things come up?
This is,
Then what?
oh my God. First of all, everyone has no history of mental illness until they have a mental illness. So I don't know what that tells you. Some people are deluded.
Say smart
people aren't capable of being tricked. You can't, this as an excuse for AI regulation is, I'm sorry, that it is just ridiculous. People think that their pets have personalities, or their pets are talking to them, or their dead relatives are advising them, or they see signs and symbols, and we don't even describe that as mental illness. That's just the human experience. To say that this is just some version of that turned up a little bit. With every new technological innovation, some people will misuse it, some people will not understand it. I'm so tired of these silly, idiotic stories. This is the same thing when they said, oh my God, you can use ChatGPT to plan a school shooting or plan a terrorist attack. It's an encyclopedia. If you Google these things, you can do. It's just a compendium of human knowledge that talks to you. It's not real. It's not scary. It's just how you use it. So we're going to listen to a couple total morons who abuse it or some reason or have some bad interaction with it and say that's an excuse to regulate what could be the most game-changing in a positive way technological development in our lifetimes because someone told some sad story in the New York Times. I thought I invented a complicated mathematical formula. It's so stupid to me. I wouldn't even do this story. I blame the New York Times for profiling this or giving any attention to a small number of idiots.
You're comparing this to people who talk to a medium to talk to their former family members or saying it was crazy.
Those people are idiots too, because that's all made up. It's not some pressing problem that some people believe in magic and ghosts and whatever.
Yeah,
it's
but
all
that
made up.
doesn't
Superstition
that
is made
generally
up.
doesn't lead to too much if you want to connect with your former not living family member versus AI. Because
what about moral panic over the Beatles music? You play the disc backwards and it's satanic messages. And it's an urgent moral problem. It's nonsense. It's just nonsense.
Okay, but
it's moral panic.
Let's add people who access AI. That's across the board, right? There's no age limitations and all the things. So when kids have access to information that might be programmed by certain people, and we talked about this before, right? AI is not this neutral thing that has neutral stances. It's like programming people that have intentions. I wouldn't be surprised if you ever watched Black Mirror where they start programming ads inside of some AI technology, and then
I love Black Mirror. Black Mirror takes an completely pessimistic, fatalistic, moralistic view of technology that everything will be bad. And okay, then go live as the Amish do in a cabin in the woods where you're, just afraid of your blender or something. Go live life like that and leave the rest of us alone.
Wow.
I'm a technological accelerator person. I am pro technology. I am a progressive in this way. I'm pro the future. I know that these things usually make our lives better, and that everyone who has ever made some claim that we're all so much worse off because of the cell phone or a newspaper or a TV or a video game ended up looking like a fool in retrospect, and as will the person who wrote this story.
Okay, firm stance from Robby. I'm just gonna leave it there. I don't feel that strongly against you right now. So you got it, fine, whatever. But I still think kids specifically should be protected in this with AI access and who is programming.
Won't someone think of the children? I think that's
yes,
a familiar trope.
Think of the children and the elderly that both use this.
That does it for us on Rising Live. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hills YouTube channel so you never miss any content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. See you later.
And happy birthday, Robby.
Thank you. Thank you so much.